cert, you can help your own community, help your local fire department, police department, and help your family. But if you have the opportunity to attend that course, I highly recommend it. Many communities offer that training. I know our fire department does cert training. It's free of charge, but you do have to attend. I believe it's a mandate at 24 hours. But they break it down into 4-hour segments so that they allow people to attend on their days off and so forth. But I highly recommend it. Gives you better understanding as how to prepare for emergencies and your basic first aid and CPR and also looking out for dangers that as a result of a disaster or earthquake. So it gets people better prepared.
Also, for people that might not be aware, what's the difference between a city police officer and the ones that are on the freeway?
Actually, you're referring to the California Highway Patrol. They basically there is no difference as far as they're law enforcement officers, period. But their main objective is traffic enforcement. But they're still they still carry a gun and badge, and they have the powers of arrest like any other local law enforcement agency. But their main focus is traffic enforcement, traffic collision, and so forth. But they also handle all the state public safety issues. But they're no different than any your local municipality agency. The difference is that they're assigned to this particular task. Just like for us, we're the city of Vernon, and our neighboring law enforcement partners are Huntington Park, city of Bell, but we all carry a gun and badge, and we have that authority.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I noticed was pretty interesting. Some cities, they'll probably have a police force that's assigned to just that city, or maybe there's a police station that's like contracted to multiple cities.
Yes, so that's the sheriff's department. They provide contract services for those cities who like to have services with the county. Some in our local area that offhand is Maywood, Cudahy, have services from the county. Maywood at one time had their own police force, but they went through some rough times and elected to have the county provide services for them. You have the City of Commerce again too, another neighboring community that contract services with the sheriff's department. But as far as working with them, we all work together in our region to address crime trends and so forth. But they're no different. They're just another law enforcement entity within the region.
Now, we all see it on TV sometimes where, like, different, like, all of a sudden on the news, like, a different city will end up having, like, a speed chase. What's the process like when all of a sudden a car speeding in your city and, like, that car came from, like, another city and so forth?
Matter of fact, we just had it this past weekend. We had there was a vehicle pursuit that's starting in LAPD's jurisdiction off of I believe it was Soto Street in the Hollenbeck area, and it ended up coming south to our city of Vernon. And the officer who was pursuing the suspect vehicle was by himself, and one of our officers happened to be in the area and saw that the officer was in pursuit by himself, and he requested authorization from the on-duty supervisor to assist that particular officer. So they have to go through a process of following our pursuit policy to request authorization to assist an officer. And of course it was granted, and then they ended up losing the vehicle somewhere in Huntington Park, but they were able to identify the vehicle soon thereafter. So, but there's a process where our staff has to follow, and it's no different than any other law enforcement agency. They have a policy that they have to adhere to, and they just have to request authorization. But then again, there's also documentation to support what actually occurred.
How about like the process when like someone's like texting or like you could tell like they were drinking and stuff?
Texting, well, that's it's illegal to do text and drive. Our officers are able to just notice by just seeing the actions of the individual in the vehicle, right? Looking down, right, their hand movements. But they have to actually be able to see the actual texting occur. Not something that you just assume they were doing it. It has to be observed by the officer.
And how about like when people have to go to like a funeral and stuff? Sometimes you'll see like the motorcycle guys.
Yes, actually that's handled by contract services. That law enforcement does not get involved in those type of services. That's a whole another gamut. It's handled by a private company that typically it's motor officers that are retired that that very familiar with the traffic and so forth and how to address those kind of programs, but it's not related to law enforcement whatsoever. But they do have to follow some rules as well. It's just because they're blocking up the street, they have to do it with due caution.
Tell me about the canine unit.
Canine unit. Actually, we just have a new canine a dog and a new canine handler. The two that we had we had two canine. Our first two canines we had them for almost 8 years, and we retired them back in October of last year. Both dogs were up there in age, and we noticed that they were slowing down quite a bit. So we made the decision, since both dogs were actually bought at the same time, they were retired together. And the city allows the handler to purchase a dog at the end of the career. So the dog is now, both dogs are now retired and spending their retirement years with their families. But now we have we purchased a new canine from a company in Riverside who actually, this particular company that we use, they obtain all their dogs from Europe. They have a great program for training new dogs from as pups. And so the actual vendor goes to Europe every couple of months and picks up a batch of dogs that he believes, based on his experience and many years of experience in training canines, that are viable or are good dogs for canine programs. So he purchases those dogs and brings them to the U.S. and as police departments need canines, they go out to these vendors and test the dogs, select a dog.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
For our program, we actually had the new officer, the new handler, and the former handler go out and look at a couple dogs. But they look at not just the dog itself. They look at the handler. Is the handler an aggressive individual, or is the dog too aggressive for the handler, per se, or maybe the dog's too big for the handler. We don't. There's no height restrictions now, so you don't want to purchase a huge dog with an individual that's not too tall to handle the dog. But they do go through a process of selecting the dog, and making sure that the handler has feels good about the dog, and the dog is he's able to control the dog. And they also go through a 6-week training program, both the canine and the handler. They work together and they conduct a series of tests for a suspect apprehension process. And if the dog meets requirements and passes each segment of the test, and they're approved for deployment. And not all dogs not all dogs make it through the program. There's some dogs they don't work as efficiently as the handler thought they would work, or the handler doesn't seem to have a good connection with the dog. So if there's no connection there, then the dog is cycled out and get another dog and try it again, see how that works. But it's very important that the handler and the dog have a good connection as far as being able to work and control the dog effectively.
Does the dog live with the handler, or does it stay in the station?
Actually, it does. Most departments, the dog does live with the handler. They have a kennel outside their home. They take the car home as well, and it is part of the family. But the handler knows that there is some limits to the canine, because it's a special trained dog. It's primarily used for narcotics or suspect apprehension. Our dog, for example, is only trained right now at this point for suspect apprehension. It still has to go through another 5-week course that deals with narcotics detection. That's another course that the handler and the canine will have to go through and be successful in completing that 5-week course. So a lot of money invested and a lot of training invested in the canine program. And don't get me wrong, there's constant training. They have to, the handler, will while he's on duty, will work with the dog throughout the day. For example, in our region, we have a training group, canine training group, and they train as a group, as a region. For example, every Wednesday they'll go out, they'll pick a certain location, they'll pick a certain task for the dogs to do, and they'll run the dogs through that training program. But they do that every week, and it continues during the life of the canine. So we have to document that the dog is receiving regular training and meeting the requirements. And they also go through an annual updates, just like an officer, right? They do go through an annual training. It's a 3-day course that the handler and the canine will attend. But you have to keep the skills up to par every year. So we invest a lot of time and money on those programs.
Cool. We'll be right back after this quick break.
Well, we're moving right along.
Yeah.
On most classic rock stations, their idea of classic rock is to play only an artist's biggest singles. At WPMD on the Nets, we realize that the most significant artists in the
Time
history of
flies
rock
so
and
fast.
roll
Yeah,
deserve to have their most
10:45
significant
already.
work played from beginning to end. So, we offer the album break. Entire albums from
Good
members
chance
of
to
the Rock and
email
Roll
during the
Hall of
break, right?
Fame presented
Well,
from start
um,
to finish.
I find
If you wanna hear
the
more about
script
the
of the
greatest
next
names in rock and
commercial.
roll
There's
able to put in the top
one you
10,
play of a
then join us
promo,
for the
then you
album.
read a promo or PSA. As a parent, you can't help but look at your child and wonder what the future holds. You may dream about the possibility of your son or daughter becoming a professional athlete or a renowned heart surgeon, but while you're dreaming, consider this. The odds of your child will be diagnosed with autism is 1 in 68. Knowing the signs of autism and addressing it early can make the world of a difference to your child and you. To learn the signs, visit autismspeaks.org. Brought to you by the Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
As I went through school, one giant question loomed over me. What did I want to be?
So it's
But in order
one
to know what I wanted to
audio
be, I had to
promo,
first
one
decide what I
audio
wanted to
PSA,
make.
and
I
but
wanted to
between
make
that,
more.
it's one
So I
live
became a
script
teacher.
of either a PSA
Now
or
I
one
make
of a
learning a
promo.
privilege,
And so
not
we
a
just
chore.
have to
And I
remember
first
Remember
that.
that up?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Not an obstacle. I make working hard
Before we're
seem
playing it on
easy,
CDs, so
and giving up
we had to
impossible.
worry about it
I make
scratching.
an old subject
We'd have
feel
to
like a fresh
monitor
thought,
the track.
and unconventional methods common. I make material things less
So this is
important,
new right now,
and
but we
little
have them
things
now
like
uploaded
patience
on the
and
computer.
kindness count.
Kind of
I make weekdays more
it
exciting
takes away the
than
worry of
weekends,
having to
and
hear it
classrooms feel
scratch.
like anything but. I make things different, which is all I ever hoped for. I'm a teacher. I make more.
So what do you guys want to talk about
Find
next?
out
What do you
how
have?
you can make more.
that was pretty cool about the dogs.
Yeah, we just kind of ironic. We just finished.
Yeah.
We just bought the
Maybe
dog in January.
Stolen cars. Wow, so that was pretty cool. We're back here at the Falcon Spotlight. I'm your host Rob Flores here at Cerritos College, Norwalk, California, and we're here with the chief of the Vernon Police Department, and if you're just joining us, it was so informative to hear about the canine unit and how much goes into a canine unit, and also in every city there's probably one of the most common things is car theft. Tell us about that.
Well, that's kind of a growing problem in our region there, Rob. Over the actually this last 2 years, we've seen an increase in auto theft in our region, and I would say I'd have to say it's related to the recent changes in Prop 47. How there was a change in a lot of crimes were reduced from felonies to misdemeanors. Since then, and that happened back in 2014, November of 2014, but over the last year and a half, we've actually seen a significant rise in auto theft, and we kind of believe it's related to the recent changes in laws. For auto theft, for example, if it doesn't meet a certain threshold, we have to sign release. Some agencies are actually signing release in the field. We don't do that. because it's considered a misdemeanor, but we actually do the entire booking process and then cite once we determine it's a misdemeanor crime. But many agencies, what they're referring to is just it's referred to as a catch and release sort of incident, where you just apprehend the individual and give him a ticket, and the individual's on his way. He's released on scene. So many of these individuals know that if it's a misdemeanor crime, the likelihood of them being released immediately is fairly high. And the reason why I say that, because some agencies are very busy and have a high volume of calls that they don't have the time to be spending in booking someone, take them to a jail facility, go through that process. It takes a lot of time. We don't have that high call volume at times, but we make it unless there's significant circumstances that dictate otherwise. But all of our staff, they book everyone to the jail facility. And that's what we want to send a message that, if you're arrested in Vernon, you will go through the process. We will not cite release unless we really have to do that process. But yes, it has increased, and we're working with our local law enforcement partners to address it in our region. As you know, many of the police vehicles now in our region have the automatic license plate reader systems that are attached to the vehicles. And as the officers are driving around, the license plates are being scanned and running through the system to determine whether a car is stolen, or if there's that vehicle's wanted, as an alert for questioning. The drivers are wanted for questioning for a related major crime, or missing persons are also listed under those vehicles, and so forth. So the license plate reader system has been a very great tool for law enforcement over the years to allow us to effectively scan the license plates. I'll give an example. Back before we didn't have the license plate reader system, officers would have to manually run that information either through their mobile computer in the vehicle or run it through our dispatch center. Typically on a shift, on a 12-hour shift, you're lucky, depending on how busy the shift is, you probably run anywhere from 20 to 50 plates. Now with the automatic system, license plate reader, you can actually run about 1,000 plates a day and scan any plates that are potentially on a stolen vehicle. So we've actually recovered quite a few vehicles and on a regular basis through the license plate reader system that report stolen. So that's another good tool for us to use.
Cool. We are down to our last 4 minutes, but I have 2 more questions. The first is, where do you see yourself after your career, and what tips do you have for people that want to follow in your same career path?
I see myself, actually, a good question, Rob, because I'm actually getting retired very soon. My goal is to, once I retire, is to travel around the world a little bit. But I do plan is to stay, working part-time, not full-time, doing maybe some teaching at a local college, or doing some side work with my dad, who's also retired. That's I know he's still eager to work, but that's an area that I'm willing to keep him busy as well, because he was a general contractor back in his day, so I know he still wants to keep busy at work. So I definitely want to spend some time with him. What I can recommend is for those who are interested in law enforcement, I would suggest get an education. It's important. Today, a high school diploma is not going to get you anywhere. You're competing with individuals now in the workforce who have an education. And it doesn't have to be an education in a degree in criminal justice. It could be in any arena. But I would suggest stay in school, get your education, and most importantly, stay out of trouble. You have to have a clean background to obtain a job in law enforcement. Something that like I said, I mentioned earlier that we are having a hard time finding qualified candidates to work in this line of field. So, school and stay out of trouble is what I recommend.
Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to be here on the Falcon Spotlight.
Rob, thank you for the invite. It was a great time, and this 55 minutes flew by.
Oh, yes, very much so. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes this episode of Falcon Spotlight. But remember, You can like my fan page, Cerritos College Falcon Spotlight. You'll find results for the fan page on Facebook, and you'll find the YouTube channel as well. But in addition, how can they contact you?
You can call me at the station, area code 323-587-5171, extension 114, or via email. Email is dcalleros@co, V as in Victor, P as in Paul, D as in David.org.
Thank you very much. This concludes this episode. Until next time, folks.